Adrian Newey's contract details have just come out, and they're making everyone super surprised. It's no shock that Lawrence Stroll did everything he could to bring him to Aston Martin, and we might even see the big announcement this weekend at the Baku Grand Prix. With Aston Martin's huge new buildings and Stroll's endless money, Newey is ready to have a blast making the next big thing in F1, especially with his favorite Honda engine. Could Aston Martin be getting ready to become the next super strong team in this new time? Ever since they said Adrian Newey was leaving Red Bull Racing, the Formula One world has been talking and guessing about where he'd go next. There were lots of rumors saying he might go to Ferrari, especially with Fred Vasseur showing he wanted him. And with Lewis Hamilton's move to Ferrari making big news at the time, it didn't seem crazy. Newey had even said that he was sad he never got to work with Hamilton during his career, so the idea of him joining Ferrari wasn't that surprising. But that deal didn't work out in the end, and now an even bigger shock hit when they found out that Newey signed a contract with Aston Martin. We'll talk about why Ferrari's deal didn't happen a little bit later. But for now, let's talk about the huge news about Newey and Aston Martin. With rumors flying around that his big announcement could come as soon as the weekend before the Baku Grand Prix, Adrian Newey has signed a 5-year deal with Aston Martin where he'll lead a team of really good airflow experts, taking control of their technical department as they get ready for the 2026 rules. This move is part of Aston Martin's big plan to get to the top of Formula One, with Lawrence Stroll not worrying too much about spending money. But it's important to know that Newey is just one part of the bigger picture. Team owner Lawrence Stroll has been carefully building a super strong team long before their new buildings were ready. He's been signing some of the smartest people in the paddock, and it's all starting to come together just as Aston Martin's fancy new wind tunnel is about to start working. Leading the technical team alongside Newey is Andy Cole, who was really important to Mercedes winning during his time from 2013 to 2020. He'll be stepping in as Aston Martin's CEO this October. Enrico Cardile, who used to be Ferrari's technical director, is also joining the team as chief technical officer. And let's not forget about Don Fallows, who came over from Red Bull in 2022. These big-name hires are just the beginning. Aston Martin has also been bringing in important middle-level engineers, names that might not make headlines but are really important to their push to the front of the grid. With the new rules coming up, Aston Martin will have an advantage that few other teams can match, making them a really tough competitor. For those who've been watching Formula One closely, this situation probably feels a little bit like you've seen it before. And if it seems familiar, that's because we've seen something like this before. Remember how almost every top team tried to get Lando Norris, yet despite all the problems at McLaren, Lando stayed with them. Why? Because Zak Brown made him a big promise, a championship-winning car by 2025. And now Zak is actually keeping that promise, even earlier than planned. Lawrence Stroll is doing something similar, but he might be making even bigger moves. He's putting together a team of superstars just like Zak did. But Lawrence has got one big advantage over McLaren. He's got Fernando Alonso. Unlike Norris, who's still trying to get his first title, Alonso is already a world champion and he does great under pressure. The focus here isn't really on Lando, but on the problems both Aston Martin and McLaren have faced and still face in their quest to build a championship-winning car. The spotlight is now right on Adrian Newey and his game-changing move to Aston Martin. With Fernando Alonso's influence and Newey's want to stay close to home in the UK, the pieces have fallen perfectly into place. At Aston Martin, Newey will take on a much more hands-on job compared to his not-so-big involvement at Red Bull, where he focused mainly on their hypercar project. Reports from BBC Sports say Newey has signed a 5-year deal with Aston Martin worth up to $30 million per year, including bonuses. An official announcement is expected soon during a press conference at Aston Martin's Silverstone base. Seen as one of the greatest F1 designers of all time, Newey has an amazing record with 12 drivers' championships and 13 constructors' titles from his times at Williams, McLaren and Red Bull. His skills are especially wanted when new rules come into play, and his timing couldn't be better as he's set to lead Aston Martin's 2026 car development. When Newey officially starts with Aston Martin in March 2025, he'll be positioned at the top of their engineering setup, watching over the team's push into the new rule era. But the road ahead isn't without its problems. Lawrence Stroll's team has failed to meet what people expected this season, and 2025 isn't expected to bring any major breakthroughs either, with the next car being more of a change of this year's design. That's why the focus is right on 2026. Aston Martin now has all the right things: top-level talent, fancy new buildings, and the skills of a legendary person like Newey. But success isn't promised. It will come down to how well these things are used. Stroll and the entire F1 world will be expecting big results, but doing it well will decide if Aston Martin can finally rise to the top. But despite all the power moves that Lawrence has been doing behind the scenes, there's still one huge problem left in his project, and that is his son Lance Stroll. Aston Martin have been both very good and very bad during the last 2 seasons, and Lance was way behind Fernando Alonso in both. And you can bet that Newey won't be too happy working with Lance, as he only wants to work with the best of the best. And thinking about the situation at Red Bull right now, it makes perfect sense for them to go after Max Verstappen. The idea of putting Alonso and Verstappen together would create a really strong duo, not just on paper but in real life, a much more winning lineup than having Verstappen alongside Lance Stroll. With Newey having no personal ties to the Stroll family, it's likely he'd push for the Alonso and Verstappen combination. Most of the key people within Aston Martin would probably support this move too, as it would give better data and make the car's development much more efficient. Lance, who's known to break under pressure sometimes, might struggle to keep up if Verstappen joins the team. We all know Alonso's days in Formula One are numbered, and he won't be going around for much longer, but rest assured he'll give everything he has to help Aston Martin change into the powerhouse they seem meant to become. That said, his passion and motivation at this point in his career are going to depend on having a top-level car and a great team of engineers backing him up, and Aston Martin can definitely deliver in that way. But they're not stopping there. They're setting the stage to bring in Verstappen at the first chance, likely in 2026. While 2025 might not bring huge changes for either Verstappen or Aston Martin, the rest of the grid isn't slowing down. Teams are quickly catching up to Red Bull, and even before the new rules kick in, Red Bull's winning could face real challenges. Max Verstappen, who's already shown signs of being frustrated with the RB20's development, might see this as the perfect chance to move on, leaving the door wide open for a move to Aston Martin. It's no secret that Lawrence Stroll is willing to make hard choices to keep his team at the top of the grid, but there's one decision he might struggle with: replacing his own son. Getting Lance out of his F1 seat and admitting that he's not the driver he hoped for could be a line he's not ready to cross. But if Stroll wants to bring Adrian Newey and Max Verstappen together, that may be exactly what needs to happen. Another important point, as mentioned earlier, is how Ferrari's chase of Adrian Newey eventually fizzled out. Their interest in bringing him on board was called off when they realized they didn't want to get caught in a money fight with Aston Martin. According to Autosport, Ferrari had initially been linked heavily with Newey when word got out that he was leaving Red Bull, and the Italian team seemed ready to go all in on the move. Sources say Ferrari team boss Fred Vasseur had lined up the money to bring Newey in as a consultant, and the plan was for him to work out of the UK rather than move to Italy. It would have been a similar setup to what Ferrari had with John Barnard, who worked from his own office in Guildford with engineers sent to his team. But Aston Martin came in strong with a huge offer, and Lawrence Stroll personally made the case to Newey. A private tour of Aston Martin's fancy Silverstone headquarters left no doubt that the team had big dreams. Stroll, always the dealmaker, was hopeful about locking Newey down, telling Bloomberg, "Adrian and I have not been only talking for months but actually for years. Adrian is clearly the most talented and gifted person in Formula One based on his track record in history, in addition to being a hell of a gentleman. So I'd be very excited for Adrian to join our team, as I think every other Formula One team on the grid would feel exactly the same." In the end, Ferrari chose not to match Aston Martin's huge offer, rumored to be around $100 million spread over 3 seasons, along with performance-based bonuses. Instead, Ferrari decided to focus on making its internal structure stronger. So, with everything in mind, do you think Aston Martin can become the next super team to dominate Formula One? Let us know in the comments below.